I'm the Maryland organizing lead for CASA. Wow, I'm so happy to be on this call. It's such a powerhouse call. And I just want to say, like, I know Vice Mayor Fry and Councilmember Jenny Garcia, you'll have to leave. So I think maybe if at the end of the introductions, can we just give them like just a couple minutes of space, Monica, so they can share before they have to go?
Definitely. Is Jenny Garcia? Yes, Jenny is on the line. Jenny, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Garcia. I'm a former 3-term council member for the town of Cheverly. And I want to thank you guys for inviting us to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Okay, so as Trent mentioned, I'll just have Amy and Jennifer kind of jump on before we go into the into the slides and into the other representatives, because I know that you guys are on a time crunch. I'm hoping that this isn't the only conversation that we'll have like this, because it's amazing to have everyone on here, and it's a conversation that needs to continually happen as we kind of work towards pushing this forward. So I guess for Amy Fry, let me ask you, how did this pass in Cheverly, and why did it pass in Cheverly?
I think I need to defer to my colleague, former Councilmember Jenny Garcia, because she is the one who brought it forward. So she might be the one that you want to ask that question to.
Thank you. Yes. So let me go ahead and ask Jenny. Sorry about that. If you can, and let me introduce. Let me translate this into Spanish as well. La pregunta, porque la señora García y la señora Fry se tienen que ir. Entonces la pregunta es, ¿por qué se decidió mover esta ordenanza o la póliza en el pueblo de Cheverly, y cómo lo hicieron? Entonces le voy a preguntar a la señora García, if you can please go ahead and share your answer.
Okay, so I wrote some things down, and my Spanish is horrible, so maybe I can read and then you can translate for me, or yes. I could just hear it in English.
Yeah, why don't you read and then I'll translate. I'll probably just ask you, like, I'll interject and just translate.
So I'll pause for each little statement and then you can translate. So, good evening. My name is Jennifer Garcia. I'm a 3-term former council member for the town of Cheverly.
Hola, mi nombre es Jenny García y yo soy, era parte del concejal por 3 términos en el pueblo de Cheverly. Era, ahora no es.
In 2020, I led the charge with the help of my colleagues to pass non-citizen voting in Cheverly.
En el año 2020, yo con mis colegas empujé para pasar la ordenanza para dejar a la gente que no son ciudadanos a votar en el pueblo.
Okay. This process took about 3 months of deliberation, along with amending our charter, which we personalized to be non-specific in citizenship status.
Tomó 3 meses para pasar esto, y fue como no sé cómo se dice, if anyone else can help me with the verbiage for charter amendment.
La Constitución de la ciudad.
Sí, entonces ellos trabajaron para cambiar la Constitución de la ciudad para poder pasar esto.
I felt passionate about non-citizen residents having the right to vote in their own community because they are taxpayers. And despite this, they cannot determine how their tax dollars are spent or who should represent their best interest.
Entonces ella se sintió muy como apasionada de pasar esto, porque los residentes, aunque no son ciudadanos, son gente que pagan impuestos en la ciudad, y por eso merecen una voz en lo que está pasando y merecen representación.
We can all agree that our children are the future, correct?
Todos podemos estar de acuerdo que nuestros hijos son el futuro, ¿verdad?
Well, guess what? Schools actually benefit when all parents can participate in their community, and their children's benefit when they witness that participation.
Que la comunidad gana cuando los padres pueden participar en lo que está pasando en la comunidad, y también los niños, los hijos, benefician de esa participación.
So disenfranchising non-citizen residents from the vote places contributing members of our community on the fringes.
Entonces, cuando no se deja que estos residentes puedan votar, los ponen como en una situación donde no tienen poder y no tienen voz en lo que está pasando en la comunidad.
In fact, it marginalizes people.
Yo no sé cómo decir marginalize.
Marginaliza.
Marginaliza a los residentes cuando ellos no tienen ese poder.
In 2021, along with the help of CASA, we organized a registration voting fair for non-citizen residents to register to vote for the first time.
En el año 2021 se hizo una feria para registrar a votantes, aunque no son ciudadanos, para poder votar en las elecciones, por la primera vez con la ayuda de CASA.
I am happy to announce that on election day, those residents, some of those residents showed up at the polls.
Y estoy muy feliz de declarar que esas mismas personas que se fueron a registrar también fueron a votar cuando fue el tiempo para votar en las elecciones.
My heart smiled. You know why? Because when people vote, they are staking a claim in the future of their community and in their nation.
Y eso me hizo muy feliz porque cuando la gente puede votar, ellos están como, tienen el poder de ser parte de la comunidad y también participar más.
So in closing, American hero and social justice Dolores Huerta once said, if people don't vote, everything stays the same. You can protest until the sky turns yellow or the moon turns blue. It's not going to change anything if you don't vote. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Entonces ella dice, como la famosa activista Dolores Huerta dice que si usted no vota no puede cambiar las cosas. Usted puede ir y protestar hasta que la luna se cambie de color azul, pero si usted no vota no hay manera de cambiar cosas o tener el poder. Entonces es muy importante votar y tener el poder de votar. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Amy, do you want to come on and say anything or?
First I just want to say I'm sorry that we kind of threw a wrench in the program. I have another meeting and I think that's why Trent wanted to make sure that we had a few words. So I apologize for that, Monica, because I know you had this beautiful outline and agenda for this evening. Secondly, I want to say thank you to the other towns who kind of paved the way for Chevrolet to make non-citizen voting happen in our town. I think we did look to Mount Rainier, we looked to Hyattsville. I think the mayor of College Park also showed up to one of our meetings. And so having that community was helpful for us to have extra support behind the movement. This year, and I tried to get the statistics just to kind of show what we were able to do in such a short span of time, but I think we had over 50 folks who did who registered under the new amendment. And this doesn't just mean that they might not have citizenship. This could mean green card status. I mean, it can mean anything, right? In fact, many people in my particular ward who are here working jobs, maybe their husband was, working something. I think my child's nursery school teacher, she'd been in Chevrolet for, I don't know, 15 years. She has like an Irish something or another. And she was able to vote for the first time. And she was so excited. And so it's really, it was really inspirational, I think, to see the CASA movement. So when we had that CASA call out just in a small portion of our community and having all these people come out on this really super cold day, where we were able to help them register. We had, people who can speak, I don't speak Spanish, so people who could come and speak Spanish. We had council members, we had people in the community just come and just trying to register these folks and give them more information and make these connections and just empowering them to let them know that it was important to hear their voice. And I would say, I think a majority of people who did register did come out and vote either through absentee or the day of, which was amazing as well. So we did have a few challenges here in Cheverly. There was, there was a little bit of pushback. Some people are just very uncomfortable with change. And I think there is a misperception of what non-citizen voting allows. But it's so important because every single person in our community should be allowed to have their voice and have their voices heard, because their voices are there, right? They're trying to communicate with us, but sometimes if we don't give them that seat at the table, they don't get to be heard. So overall, I just want to say thank you, because it's the communities around us that really inspired us, helped us to get there. And then it was CASA, Councilmember Garcia, who really pushed and got this through and then helped us to implement it. So if we can be a resource, the town of Cheverly, myself, Councilmember Garcia, former Councilmember Garcia, can be a resource, we're happy to be so in any way.
Thank you so much. Okay, so for my Spanish speak, I'm looking at you actually, Salida. If you can help me translate this, I'll translate, but wherever I can't find the word, if you can help me. Entonces, voy a traducir lo que la señora Fryer recién dijo, que ella se tiene que ir rapidito y por eso la invitamos a ella que hable un poco sobre el proceso. Y ella le dio las gracias a todos que están acá por la ayuda que se prestó para pasar esto en el pueblo de Cheverly. Que, por ejemplo, ella conoció a una señora que es de, no sé cómo se dice Ireland en español.
Irlanda.
Irlanda, eso es lo que yo vi en Google también. So, que ella tenía una señora que es de Irlanda y que vivió en Cheverly por como 20 años y no sabemos cuál fue la cosa, la situación que ella tuvo, pero ella pudo votar por la primera vez por pasar esta ordenanza, porque pasó esta ordenanza, porque ella no era ciudadana. Entonces se registró, fue y votó por la primera vez en su propio pueblo. Y también lo que ella dijo es que ellos tuvieron esa registración y toda la gente que se fueron a registrar, que no eran ciudadanos, también salieron para votar. Y eso es lo que es muy importante, que hay interés, que gente quiere participar y necesitan tener ese poder y quieren tener una voz en lo que está pasando. Entonces ella dijo que gracias a CASA y todos por como apoyar al pueblo durante el proceso y que ella está disponible también para ayudar como ella pueda para que esto pase en los pueblos que no lo tienen todavía. Does that sound, did I do justice to that translation? Okay, good. Okay, great. So, thank you so much, Vice Mayor Fry and Jenny, thank you so much. If you guys have to leave, we appreciate you. So thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and just go into the presentation. Entonces le di las gracias a las dos por estar presentes para darnos esta información y ahora voy a ir voy a compartir mi presentación otra vez para que ustedes lo vean.
Mónica, rápidamente, todos pueden presentarles. Can everyone introduce themselves really quick? Everyone that didn't get a chance to?
Oh, sure. Who are we missing?
I think everybody else, like Melinda, Mayor Barrow, Malik.
Yeah, sure. If you, why don't we just go ahead and do that? If you guys can take a quick minute to introduce yourselves and your role and where you're from.
Well, hi, this is Mayor Barrow. I am Sidara Barrow. I am a fourth generation Washingtonian and have lived in the town of Comer Manor for 38 years. And I'm in the second term of mayor. Thank you. And thank you, Monica, for pulling this together. Really appreciate it.
I'm looking at you, Malik.
I saw that one coming. No, I'm kidding. Good evening, everyone. First Ward Councilmember Harding. I'm very, very grateful to be on this call, and I look forward to what everyone has to say. It's already started very well. I didn't know much about Cheverly's triumph inside of their area. So I'm looking forward to this.
Sorry, I'm going to translate. I forget to translate because I haven't done this in a while. La señora que recién habló, la señora Sadara Barrow, es la alcalde de Colmar Manor y Malik es un miembro del concejal del distrito, del primer distrito de Colmar Manor. So now I'm looking at the beautiful Miss Melinda.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you for hosting this. I'm Melinda Mendoza, council member for the town of Colmar Manor.
Okay, ella es, Melinda también es parte del concejal de Colmar Manor, and I'm looking at the dapper Mr. Doug Bowles.
Aren't you sweet? Thank you, Monica, for putting this together. Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Bowles, and I am the current serving council member for Ward 3 in Colmar Manor. It's great to be with you this evening, and I look forward to all that you have to share with us. Thank you.
Ese es Doug Bowles, él es el concejal del Distrito 3 de Colmar Manor. I think, well, we have Chief Stone. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, Chief Stone. You're welcome to.
Hello, Tracy Stone, Town of Colmar Manor. As it relates to elections, for the last several elections, I've helped to facilitate them, and that is I've been the kind of the go-between between the County Board of Elections, who maintains our voter rolls, and the Board of Elections, who oversees the election.
Thank you. Entonces ese es el, no sé cómo se dice el chief en español, pero el señor Stone es de la policía de Colmar Manor y él ha ayudado con elecciones en el pasado.
El jefe de policía.
Sí. ¿Jefe de la policía?
Sí.
Okay, perfecto. Okay, I think that might be it for now. A lot of other people are on here too, but let's just go. I think we're good.
Can they just
Trent, are we missing anyone?
I think there's a couple others, like Diana Marverly.
Oh, yes, please. Marverly?
Hi, everyone. I am Marverly Nettles, the council member for Cheverly Ward 1, and thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Marverly es parte del concejal de Cheverly también. Y tenemos a Diana.
Hi, everyone. Monica, thanks for putting this on and inviting me. I'm a resident from Cottage City. Been here for 8 years before moving from my hometown of Chicago. And I've been working and advocating with immigrant communities for the last couple of decades. So happy to listen in on this call.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So I'm
Juan, Sara, and Savi. Lo siento, 3 más. Juan, Sara, Savi. ¿Se puede o no?
Sí, Savi y Sara se pueden introducir rapidito.
Están en mudo, si ustedes quieren. Es okay. Si no se puede, está bien también. Seguimos ya.
Okay. Okay. Entonces, let's go back to this window. Okay, so some quick demographics on Colmar Manor, as stated, as collected by the U.S. Census. I think this is 2020 data. The language spoken at home, it looks like language spoken at home. The 2 languages most spoken at home are English and Spanish. So as you can see, 44.7% English, 44.1% Spanish. Los idiomas que se hablan más en Colmar Manor, lo que dice el census es 44.7% hablan inglés y 44.1% hablan español. There are obviously other languages, but these are the 2 primary languages in Colmar Manor. When we're looking at native and foreign born, naturalized citizens in Colmar Manor, 36.9%, and not a U.S. citizen, to me, I didn't even realize this, 63.1%. Entonces, estos datos son de los que son nativos y nacidos en el extranjero. Los que son ciudadanos en Colmar Manor son 36.9%. Los que no son ciudadanos es 63.1%, que cuando yo vi este número me sorprendió. And I specifically looked at Hispanic or Latino. Obviously, the information is very rich. It's really worthwhile taking a dive into it. It says, what I believe it says is that there are 925 Hispanic or Latino identified in Colmar Manor. I think that number is probably a bit higher. And then it gives a number for Hispanic or Latino of any race in Maryland. Entonces, este dato habla sobre los que son hispanos o hispanas o latinos, como se identifican en el census, y dice que 925 se identifican así. Yo creo que ese número es un poco bajo. Yo creo que hay mucho más que no se colectó en el census. And then just looking at populations and people, this is specifically by age range. So the median age in Colmar Manor is 37.4, which I thought was pretty interesting. Entonces esto habla más sobre la población y las personas que viven en el pueblo en respecto de las edades. Y la edad, no sé cómo se dice average en español, pero es 37. Promedio es 37.4, la edad de la mayoría de la gente que viven en Colmar Manor. So when I was researching this, I'll admit I did it quick and dirty because I was just curious as to when all of this happened, and it's not really very easy to find it, but I did the best I could, and there might be some edits to this, but this is what I found. Does anybody want to take a guess as to when non-citizen voting took place or was enacted in, for example, Barnesville, Maryland? Anybody want to take a guess?
What is Barnesville?
I don't know what Barnesville was either. It looks like it's kind of like close to like the College Park-ish, Burtonsville, like in that kind of area. Or that might be Garrett Park, but it's like within our kind of geographic area. So when I took a look, Barnesville was in 1918, which shocked me. Next one is Tacoma Park in 1992, Garrett Park in 1999, Hyattsville in 2016, Mount Rainier 2017. Tell me if any of these are wrong. College Park 2017, Riverdale 2018, Chevy Chase, Maryland 2018, Cheverly 2020, I think it was. Yeah, we'll double check. Brentwood 2021. Entonces, cuando yo busqué cómo fue lo de votar, aunque no sea ciudadano. 2020?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll edit that. Cuando yo busqué cómo fue el proceso de poder votar en estas diferentes ciudades, aunque no sean ciudadanos, lo que encontré es que en estos diferentes pueblos empezaron, como usted, el primero fue en el 1918. Después Tacoma Park en el 1992, Garrett Park en 1999, Hyattsville 2016, Mount Rainier 2017, College Park 2017, Riverdale 2018, Chevy Chase 2018, Cheverly 2020 y Brentwood 2020. So let me go ahead and stop my share. So now I'll just invite our local, some other representatives that have experience with this. So if you can answer a couple of these questions, like why did it take place and what was the process like? So maybe I'll put someone on the spot. So let me go ahead and put, actually Candace, if I could put you on the spot to talk about this a little bit.
How did I know you were going to do that? So the city of Hyattsville passed our law to allow non-citizen voting in 2016 under the leadership of Councilmember Lawrence. And it took about a year, roughly, of drafting community hearings and public comment before we got to the point where we unanimously passed our legislation in December of 2016. Was there more that you want me to cover in there? Just kind of how it came to be?
How it came to be, like, but why? Like, why? What was?
Yeah. So, non-citizen voting, and sorry, I'll try to translate as best as I can. I don't, my vocabulary sucks. Sí, la ciudad de Hyattsville aprobó una ley para permitir que los no ciudadanos votaron en 2016 bajo el liderazgo del concejal Lawrence. Pasa como un año para creer, después de meses de comentario de los residentes y, ¿cómo se dice? Edits of the language, of the
Editar el
draft
lenguaje.
language. Gracias. When I was elected in 2015, my meeting, the first meeting that I ever took was with CASA, with Julio Murillo and Kim Propriet. And it was for the purpose of discussing non-citizen voting. Non-citizen voting was something that was on my agenda going into office, but not publicly communicated because of the climate in the city at that time. And so to have an organization like CASA that was willing to help kind of garner support and advocates and kind of walk with us through that process was really important. And it was also important, I know 2016 wasn't that long ago, but in terms of people's easiness and willingness to understand the real importance of diversity and inclusion, not just the lip service to it, but real importance of including people in democracy. It's come a long way from 2016. A lot happens in 5 years. And I'm sorry, can someone translate that for me? My mind is gonna go blank on me in a minute.
Entonces, Candice dice que fue un proceso y que CASA como ayudó que pasar esto, pero también ellos empezaron a hablar de esto y esto fue parte de la agenda de Candice cuando ella fue el alcalde de Hyattsville, de avanzar esto, pero si se recuerdan, el año 2016 no fue muy fácil para muchos de nosotros. Fue difícil de hablar sobre esto, pero ahora estamos en un diferente tiempo y lo que pasa es que si la gente puede hablar de que ellos quieren que seamos inclusos, que nosotros apreciamos diversidad, pero es una cosa de decirlo y es otra cosa de cómo vivirlo y hacer y poner cosas en práctica para demostrar que sí, esto es importante para mí, es importante para nuestra comunidad. Did I share everything that she said? Okay, good. Well, actually, so you actually just gave me a good segue into to inviting Trent to talk a little bit about.
I have a little bit more, if that's okay.
Oh yes. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's fine. And so, as a mayor in your first couple of months in a new role, especially at a time when getting everyone to understand the dynamics of community and the importance of really expanding democracy in a number of ways. Remember, we just come off the heels of passing legislation that allowed 16-year-olds to vote. That was really our first test of what it's like, what it means to expand democracy in the city of Hyattsville. And even that was contentious, right? And So in first couple of months in a new term, fresh term, you know, and there's all these other things around whether or not people believe you can do the job, all of that stuff, right? It's important to have a council member to be able to lead on drafting legislation and bringing along colleagues to be able to develop legislation that will pass. Because in many of our cities, particularly in Prince George's County, the majority of our cities are council manager form of government. What that means is that, you know, it's not necessarily a strong mayor where they decide, whatever they decide to do goes. It is more like they are a member of council, they present proposals, and they still have to get the buy-in of all of their council members to make something law. And so as much as I may want to have done something, or as much as one other council member may have wanted to do something, it really required getting several, at least a majority of council members to be on the same page about what was being proposed. And please feel free to give Cliff Notes versions of this if you're interesting, but it's important for us to be on the same page. And so Councilmember Lawrence worked with three other council members to draft a proposal. Even there was, you know, not consensus among the four on exactly how to approach the legislation. And we had two council members who were like, no, we want non-citizen voting. Let's do it the way that we envision it to be, absent, you know, any type of ID verifications and, you know, all of that stuff that was at the time, everyone was trying to do, not everyone, but people who were trying to suppress votes would do. And then we had two other council members were like, no, we need to have some type of verification, you know, ID process to verify. And that was a deal breaker for two of the other members. And it was also a deal breaker for many other council members too. It's like, if we're going to do this, we need to do this in the way that we would want, you know, someone who is a natural born citizen to experience. And that is to not have those barriers to access that are proposed, you know, don't propose additional barriers on one group that you don't propose on another group. And so the final legislation, after getting those two council members on board with that proposal, what was presented was one that was a full, you know, a full slate of everything that was desired for that bill. And the only real compromise that I recall, compromise from the dais. Of course, there were discussions behind the scenes, but the real compromise on the dais was a lot of residents came to testify that they felt that, you know, they might have said, hey, I actually don't think this is a good idea. I don't support it. But if you're going to do it, can you lengthen the amount of time that a person has to have established residency? I think our initial proposal had 14 days and that expanded to 30 days. So that was the one kind of major adjustment that I recall us doing, in addition to hiring staff to be able to support the additional, the separate voter roll that we were already keeping because of 16-year-olds, and to just kind of make sure that we were making all of our material inclusive and representative of our community as possible.
Okay, so I know for sure I'm going to need help with this translation. So I'll take it from the beginning, but then if somebody can help me towards the middle. Entonces, lo que la señora Candice dice es que cuando ella fue la alcalde, fue importante, sorry, I have a bug. Que es fácil decir que yo como alcalde quiero pasar esto, pero también ella tenía que trabajar con miembros del concejal. Entonces fue muy importante que todos estuvieran en la misma página. Pero también no es una conversación fácil. Algunos de los miembros del concejal querían requisitos cuando estamos hablando de identificación, otros tenían como preguntas sobre la edad, porque también lo que hicieron en Hyattsville es bajar la edad de poder votar a 16, que la gente que tenían 16 años podían votar. Entonces, todo eso tomó tiempo y tomó como hablando con con ellos mismos para a ver qué es lo que se puede pasar, qué se puede pasar que sea inclusivo, que no le pide a un grupo de gente más cosas de que no se le pregunta a la gente que son ciudadanos o que fueron nacidos en los Estados Unidos. Entonces, tener un proceso donde la experiencia de votar es lo mismo para todos, que no hay como límites o requisitos especiales para un grupo de gente. Sorry, if anyone else can fill in where I might have missed some things.
You didn't miss much, to be honest with you. No faltó mucho, solo lo único que dijo que una de las últimas cosas que tuvieron que poner para la legislación final, que originalmente hacía 15 días que la gente tenía que estar bien de ahí, la cambiaron para 30, y fue el único compromiso que al final hicieron, pero sí hicieron una legislación la cual ellos querían no cortarla antes del tiempo para así poder tener igualdad entre los dos grupos. Hiciste todo el resto.
Gracias. Okay, entonces, I'm going to ask Trent to kind of talk about, like, what is non-citizen voting? Let's just get with the basics. What is it? And then we can ask the different representatives, like, what they did, or, again, we can ask them to kind of share the way Candace did.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to talk real briefly to continue to allow like other representatives to share about their experiences in their city. But, you know, a couple of points that I want to share is like non-citizen voting can mean different things to different cities. And as former council member Jenny Garcia was sharing in Cheverly, right, they actually had to change the charter to allow for everybody to be able to vote regardless of immigration status, meaning like it doesn't matter what your immigration status is, whether you're undocumented, whether you have a green card or you have DACA or TPS. If you pay taxes and you've lived in the town, so then you get to vote. Now, there's been some distinctions. For example, in Riverdale, people who are non-citizens can do same-day voter registration, right? In Cheverly, they can't. They had to register up to 3 weeks in advance. So, you know, I know that voting is different in different places. So obviously non-citizen voting doesn't change like how the voting happens. It only changes who's eligible to vote. And so basically, another thing is, right, like I know that the person from Colmar Manor mentioned like they get from the Prince George's County voter roll, right? So what happens is when you pass non-citizen voting is that the city maintains a separate voter roll than the county board of elections, obviously, because people for non-citizen voting can only vote in the city. They can't vote for the county or the governor or outside of the city itself. Entonces, rápidamente para compartir un poco sobre cómo votando para personas que no son ciudadanos, en diferentes ciudades hacen diferentes maneras, ¿verdad? En unas ciudades pueden registrar lo mismo día de la votación, en otras ciudades tiene que registrar antes, como un mes antes para tener la capacidad para votar, pero realmente en Cheverly, como estaba diciendo la concejal, que realmente se cambió su constitución para dejar todos votar, no importa estatus, no importa si tiene DACA o TPS o no tiene ningún estatus, porque todos pagan impuestos. And so, you know, we've worked with a bunch of the other cities to make this happen, and just it's so amazing seeing voters, you know, after, you know, when they realize they can actually vote. Some of the members we've talked to, you know, don't even believe it. Like they think we're lying. They're so excited. It's just, it's a really neat experience to see people have the opportunity to do it. Entonces muchas personas realmente no creen que se pueden hacerlo cuando pasamos la ley, ¿verdad? Entonces cuando se descubren que se puede hacerlo, están tan felices y es muy, muy increíble para ver cómo se puede cambiar la comunidad, mejorar la comunidad, ¿verdad? Para involucrar más personas. So, you know, I can leave it there. I'll be ready to answer more questions at the end, but I think that we should definitely maybe continue forward with Mayor Benitez and Mayor Reminio Lopez for you guys to share about your experiences too.
can I just quickly just comment after my past mayor, Hollingsworth? In Hyattsville, I was part of the advocacy fight. At that time, I found myself as part of, the group of local residents attending the meetings and just giving testimony. And it was a personal fight for me because I got my papers until 2011 after living here for 22 years being undocumented. And I already was here and there locally involved, but I could never fully participate in the local political process, right? So there was this in cities that do not have non-citizen voting, there is this type of second-class citizenry, right, with local participation, because you're actively paying your taxes, you're a local resident, but in the local political process, you don't have a seat at the table. And it was a personal fight for me. When I became a citizen in 2014, literally the first thing, and I think I shared this story with our past mayor Hollingsworth, like a month in after I became a citizen, I registered to run for local office, right? And I think that just speaks to the potential of enfranchising all residents within our municipalities, right? We sometimes question why our residents do not show up, why groups of folks do not show up in our meetings and our council meetings and our committee meetings. Why aren't they actively involved? And I think that I have definitely seen just a greater level of engagement from our non-citizen residents here in the city of Hyattsville, especially after we were able to pass to make this change. And just emphasizing what our past mayor Hollingsworth shared, that in the city of Hyattsville, even 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds can vote, right? So that's super exciting. This last time around when I ran for city council, every single house was a potential voter, right? I had a list of registered voters, but like I committed to knocking on every single door because every single person mattered. And we made history here in the city. A greater number of non-citizen voters came out and registered, including on the day of election. So it's been a powerful experience, and there's many ways that you can argue for it, right? Like Trent shared, but I think it also speaks just to human dignity, right? This is just the right thing to do. It centers the dignity of people, of our residents, that are our neighbors, our friends. They go to our local schools. They're just part of our fabric, and we just have to fully open the door. Thank you.
So I have a question. So like, why 16 and 17-year-olds? Because this keeps on popping up, and I wonder why people are for it, why people are against it.
So, Mónica, Sandino se puede traducir.
Sí, rápidamente quería compartir después de nuestra pasada alcalde, porque yo soy vivo en la ciudad de Hyattsville, pero ahora soy concejal también. Y me recuerdo que cuando estábamos luchando para cambiar la ley para permitirle que todos pudieran votar en la ciudad, era una lucha personal para mí, porque en ese momento todavía era indocumentado. Había vivido en este país 22 años sin documento, y fue hasta el 2011 que logré agarrar mis papeles. La primera cosa que hice fue correr para concejal de la ciudad cuando me convertí en ciudadano en el 2014. Y eso habla de que cuando abrimos procesos y puertas para que nuestros residentes locales puedan participar completamente en su humanidad total, vamos a ver el gran potencial, ¿verdad? Y desde entonces hemos visto solamente el incremento de involucramiento de los residentes de nuestra ciudad. En estas pasadas elecciones, un gran número de residentes no ciudadanos lograron participar, incluyendo el mismo día de votación que se pudieron registrar y participar. Y hemos estado viendo la participación incremental. Esto habla de la dignidad humana de cada residente porque ellos son parte de la fábrica de nuestra comunidad local.
Y entonces la pregunta es, yo he visto gente hablar sobre la edad de 16 y 17. ¿Por qué es una cosa? ¿Por qué hay gente que están en favor y gente que no están en favor de eso? So again, the question is like, this whole issue of the 16, 17-year-old, like the whole age thing, like, why are people for it? Why are people like not, you know, in agreement with that?
I don't know if how many municipalities have it. So I don't know if Selena, you want to give insight. I'm of course happy to share our experience.
Yeah, we have 16 and over. This was the first years that we enabled it, and I think it's important. You know, we have keep talking about democracy and inclusion. A lot of time the youth are taken out from the equation because they feel like they don't know, they don't do this, they don't properly do this. That might be some of the things that people say, but I think we take for granted how much involved and how much their opinion matters. So if we want to make sure that they're voting on for the president or legislator or anybody by the time they hit 18 to be a legal age, we need to start working and showing them what it specifically means for them to vote at municipal level. And at the same time, it allows for the candidates that are running for the office to take them and their opinions as a voter and not just like dismiss them. So they get to also, you know, make decisions on how the future is being affected, because sometimes we take for granted that every decision we made today affects them in the long run, even further beyond that we might even be here. So it's important for them to also get involved. And studies have shown that if youth get involved in voting early, they will be involved in voting for the rest of life more than if they do not, if they didn't, I know my cat, right? If they do not get involved. So to me, it's like, it's an entryway for them to become voters. They get to do it in a safe atmosphere, most likely with their parents, you know, when it comes to candidates, but at the same time, it raises the awareness for the candidates that they have to speak to the youth and they have to create a plan, and their priorities that also need to be reflected in the budget. And in that way, they also take responsibility for what the present and future looks like in our cities. And that gives them an opportunity to be vocal about what is it that they need and not be dismissed. So, lo que dije es que en mi ciudad también, como la ciudad de Hyattsville, tenemos votantes de 16 y 17 años, y para nosotros es importante para ser inclusivos, para que sus voces sean escuchados, y así también los candidatos tienen que hablar con ellos. Lo que viene al presupuesto de la ciudad tiene que reflejar también lo que sus intereses, porque nosotros a veces se nos olvida que las decisiones que tomamos ahora los afectan directamente a ellos en su futuro, y así también ellos son partícipes del presente y del futuro que ellos crean, y no los podemos dejar al lado creyendo que no están preparados o que no saben. Esa no es la manera de tratar a la juventud. Entonces es importante también darle voz y voto y representación. Así también ellos son participantes activos en lo que pasa en la ciudad el día de ahora y cómo afecta su futuro. And I'll tell you this, I started advocating when I was 15, and I'm mayor, right? So we cannot dismiss what activism in the community looks like and act like the youth do not know what they're appealing in. We've seen a lot of movement when it comes to climate change, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to rights of people, a lot of it led by the youth. So even that has changed a lot from 2016 to presently, even higher involvement. But the students have always been involved, like through history. When it comes to the moments, even in our home countries, most of it, like the change that happened has been like youth led, and they have pushed the status quo to make sure they become more inclusive. So termino solo diciendo que yo empecé activista a la edad de 15 años. Yo ahora soy alcalde, entonces no podemos creer de que la juventud no sabe lo que quiere, lo que lucha. Hemos visto mucho cambio y mucho crecimiento recientemente que han sido movimientos liderados por la juventud, y como también en nuestros propios países como acá, la juventud ha empujado los movimientos para asegurar inclusión y cambio, como cambio climático, inclusión en las escuelas, y ellos lo han podido hacer ellos solos, a veces con poca ayuda. Pero la historia enseña que cuando los estudiantes se movilizan, el cambio pasa, y creo de que no podemos dejarlos afuera de la discusión a lo que viene al presente y futuro de sus vidas.
Thank you. Gracias. Okay, so I'm just doing a quick time check. It's 7:59. I definitely want to invite Mayor Rocio to kind of talk on this a little bit. And then after she talks, if we can just open it up to anyone and everyone who wants to ask questions. And this includes the elected representatives. Ask anything of, anyone that's on the line. So, okay, lo que quiero decir ahora es que el tiempo ahora es casi son las 8. Quiero invitar al alcalde Rocio que hable un poco, pero después abrirlo para preguntas y comentarios de cualquier persona que quiera hacer preguntas. Entonces, Rocio, por favor, si puede hablar.
Hola, sí, buenas noches a todos. Good evening, everybody, once again. I just want to, I don't want to extend this, but I just want to give a prime example what it is and what all the things that we have worked through the years. As Romel mentioned, I came to this country undocumented. I became TPS receiver. I also had my green card and eventually got my citizenship. So what I'm trying to say with that was the approach that I took when I first decided, and this is a little kind of like a sad story, because I have to put the project into somebody else's hands, because the perception that the community had, it was like, because I'm Latina, I want to make this legislation just for the Latinos, which was a big mistake, because what I was, we find out is like, there's not only Latinos that are on their situation, like they probably are green card holders, they have temporary protection status, or they have some sort of asylum. So when we were doing door knocking with CASA, we find people from Asia, we have people from Europe, we have different people from Haiti that they have different status, and they're not citizens. So to make the fight less terrible among our community and the system that we are, have to fight, I made the approach, and thanks to former council member Jerry Burgess, because he was the one who actually, I designated him to work directly with CASA. So that's not the Latina trying to push a Latino legislation. That's what people think. So he did all the work, and we were able to focus only on the documented residents. But the approach I took was, I want to prove you that these taxpayers, they're homeowners. So I did not really knock a lot of the doors of the apartments. I based my approach to the homeowners that have been in the town of Brentwood for 30 years, 20 years, 15 years, and they for one reason or another, they're not U.S. citizens. So, and we proved with that having that approach, people were able to engage. And I can say, and I close my statement that I'm going to say in Spanish later, is that 78 of our residents were able to go out and vote, and 5 of them became U.S. citizens after the election. So I have those numbers. And that's a success story, because that's how it started. And I have to mention that the letter that I provide to them, that they were able to vote in local election, helped them during the interview they had with the immigration. So that's some of the things that are able, because that's what we want to prove, that we want to be part of the system, that we want to be part of this country. So that's how Brentwood was able to help these families to be and receive their citizenship. Quiero decir que yo fui como el concejal Romel de Hyattsville. También llegué aquí indocumentada cuando era niña. Pasé por todos los procesos, tuve TPS, obtuve mi residencia legal, eventualmente me hice ciudadana y pues ahora pues soy alcalde aquí en la ciudad de Brentwood, y una de las cosas que trabajamos mucho fue el poder pasar lo de los no ciudadanos que puedan votar en nuestra ciudad, porque me di cuenta de que hay muchas personas, dueños de casas aquí en Brentwood, que tienen algún tipo de estatus legal, no necesariamente tienen que ser latinos, como muchas personas creían que yo estaba queriendo pasar esta legislación para ayudar a los latinos, nada más para que votaran, pero eso no es así. Encontramos personas de Asia, de Europa, de Haití, que estaban en una situación con documentos, pero no eran ciudadanos. Entonces, eso nos ayudó a nosotros a reconocer que si queremos ser inclusivos, pues teníamos que incluir a esa comunidad. Obviamente nos enfocamos mucho en los dueños de casa que han estado aquí por 15, 20, 30 años, y ese fue lo que nosotros hicimos, poder pasar la legislación. No lo hice yo, lo hizo el concejal Jerry Burgess, para que hubiera una clase de nivel y que la gente dejara de pensar que lo estaba haciendo nada más por la comunidad latina. So, eso es lo que estamos haciendo en Brentwood, y eventualmente, I just want to say that we are working on getting, because we only did the documented residents, but eventually I have a council now that they are in the same page trying to change our charter. Vamos a cambiar nuestra constitución de la ciudad para poder cambiarlo a que no solamente las personas documentadas puedan votar, sino también las personas que no tienen documentos aún puedan votar, para poder ser inclusivos para todos.
So just a question again, gracias, alcaldesa Lucia. Van a cambiar el charter, so you're going to change the charter so anyone, regardless of status, is able to vote.
Yes, we were able to pass a resolution, and now we are in the process to change that to be an ordinance. So when we do an ordinance, we have to, basically include it in our charter. We have to amend our charter to make that ordinance to happen here. So we are in the we're going to start, right, Trent?
Thank you. Okay, so it's 8:05. I want to open it up to anybody that wants to ask questions, get clarity on any issues. Son las 8:06 ahora, y lo quiero abrir para que cualquier persona que tenga preguntas, haga su pregunta, y si necesitan clarificación en algo que han decidido los representantes, por favor, ahora es el momento.
Sí, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Sara Campos y yo estoy contenta porque pues nos están dando un apoyo para que pues nosotros las personas hispanas que no tenemos documentos podamos votar cuando nos toque otra vez acá en nuestra comunidad de Colmar Manor. Y pues nada, darle las gracias a todas las alcaldesas que están acá en la reunión, apoyándonos, ¿verdad? A la comunidad de acá de Colmar Manor. Y que Dios les dé sabiduría para tomar buenas decisiones para todos, ¿verdad? Los que vivimos acá, aquí en estas comunidades como Catawba City, Highfield, que estamos cercanas y somos hermanos, ¿verdad? Y eso, muchas gracias.
Gracias. I'm going to translate this into English. Mari, sorry, I have a 3-year-old that is going through a tantrum right now. Okay, so basically what Sara was saying, just one second. Okay, so what Sara was saying is that thank you everyone. Thank you for the support. That she appreciates that this can possibly take place in Colmar Manor because she's a resident here and she wants to be able to have a voice, and so she appreciates everyone and all the mayors that are speaking up and helping us kind of like maneuver through this whole situation. Gracias, Sara. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment, ask a question, anything like that? ¿Hay otra persona que le gustaría hablar, hacer un comentario?
Monica, can I share my experience for the non-voting in behalf of Mount Rainier? So pregunté que si quería compartir también la experiencia de nosotros a ser no votantes, a tener no votantes registrados en nuestra ciudad. So for us, you know, I was a resident advocating for it. And that was the reason, one of the reasons I decided to run, because I felt like the cards were not dealt properly. And it felt like all the advocating we were doing, and we managed to pass it actually about a month after Hyattsville. So at least we were feeling, yeah, and I agree with Candace that there's a lot of changes that happened between 2016, 2017 to present. But the fact that we were both cities were going and pushing at this at the same time about it allowed for at least some room to breathe, but at the same time, you know, seeing some of the people that were like, you know, didn't want it in Hyattsville, like moved to, you know, talk to Mount Rainier as well, that they didn't want it for, because they felt like, you know, we were giving people like a privilege. And we make the clear message that it was the right, and we needed to respect people's rights. So it was important for us to be able to grant that, the ability to like give people their own rights. And it became important for us to not take it to vote, because we felt like, one, we were elected by the community, but at the same time, it has never been very positive work for people of color, even women, to take things to vote. As a woman of color, a migrant, and we have to remember how women been given the right to vote many years ago. We wouldn't have like taken as long, even to the point that many of the people here in the call were not even considered humans to even be given the right to vote. So now you're in a position to right the wrongs of like the past. As we said, it's like we work so hard to get elected from office to have representation. So therefore, at the same time, it is our right to be able to change constitution to reflect our community and the rights of them. And I don't want to make it seem like if there's not a 50% Latino or 5% of this or 5% of that, that right needs to carry. Even if it was one person that was non-citizen that lives in the town, this right needs to be awarded to them, because it's what it needs to happen. And yes, it is not a Latino thing. It's a nation, it's a Black, it's even European. There's members of our community from the various places that you'll be surprised once you start the registration process, who comes out to the table to register. But you also create, you know, safe spaces in which now that, you know, the voters start feeling like the community is reflecting a little bit more of what the values are. You also have like the opportunity that opens up the space for people to feel like if they call somebody from City Hall or even the police, they are not going to be like, you know, treated as second-hand citizens, that they have a right and they have a voice. So at least for me, it felt like that started to changing as well. Our police department also feels like because of this involvement, more people are willing to call and say they need this help, and that definitely has helped in our city. We had our challenges, but we're glad to say on May we had the third round of elections for non-citizens to vote, and every year we continue to increase the numbers. Obviously, during the last presidential administration, it was tough because, you know, it was a lot of fear going on, but they trusted the fact that we were going to respect their rights and we were not going to take them for granted. And that's created for even more involvement from our residents, people that rent, that own, have businesses, and even hire other Mount Rainier residents in the city. And it gave them the opportunity to let them know that they're important to the city and their vote and their voice matters. So at least for me, like that's the reason why it became like important for me to work with the other cities if they needed my help to make this pass, because ultimately what I want to see is like safe spaces being created, not just in my city, but all around the other cities. And yeah, we do have members from other cities that go, you guys did it, like we would like for, you know, our cities to be also inclusive and show that we matter to them. And this is why it's important for also me be here and be, if you guys need a resource from me, be there as well. So, le voy a decir rápido un summary, pero para mí fue importante, también nos ha ido bastante que estaba pasando toda esta situación en 2016, asegurando que, you know, estamos entre Hyattsville, nosotros fue un mes de separación entre lo que pasamos, pero los dos estamos siguiendo con los mismos problemas a la misma vez. cierta gente creía que era un privilegio que se le estaba acomodando a la gente y no entendían que era un derecho que se les estaba abriendo, que lo tenían que hacer. Y a la misma vez poder asegurarse que sean sus derechos protegidos. Entonces, no importa que haya una persona que se beneficie de esto o 50% de la ciudad, ese derecho tiene que ser dado, porque de la misma manera que como mujer latina de color o migrante, el derecho se nos negó por muchos años a las mujeres, a las personas de color, hasta el punto que no nos consideraban personas para poder votar. Entonces, ahora que estamos en posiciones que podemos hacer estos cambios, es parte de lo que tenemos que hacer para asegurar que no tratemos a los otros como nos tratan, como nos trataron a nosotros. Así que es como una manera de luchar para asegurar que las leyes cambien, para asegurar que todas las gentes sean protegidas de la misma manera y las voces sean escuchadas. So, that's it. Ahí estamos.
Gracias. I don't know why my Spanglish. I was going to say thank you. Anyways, thank you. Okay, so yeah, anyone else want to ask questions, make a comment? Anyone?
Monica, this is Mayor Barrow. I will just make a comment. I want to, again, really appreciate you for putting together these folks so that we can hear and listen to what's going on in the other communities. And I want to thank all of the participants for your leadership. I have had short conversation with Mayor Lopez, and I will have more conversations with Mayor Lopez, as well as the other mayors. And I've also been speaking to the new Mayor Cheverly and having conversations with her as well. So we're looking forward to a lot more conversations. And I just want to thank you for hosting this so that we can hear as a group right here. So thanks always.
Entonces, la alcalde, la señora Barrow, dice que gracias por organizar esto para poder escuchar de los otros alcaldes sobre el proceso de poder votar aunque no sea ciudadano, que ha estado hablando con, por ejemplo, el alcalde de Brentwood, Rocío, con el alcalde de Cheverly. Entonces, gracias por como tener este espacio para hablar, y que es una de muchas discusiones para tener en la comunidad sobre esto. Thank you, Mayor. ¿Hay otras preguntas? Anyone have any questions, any comments? ¿Otras preguntas? Cosas que le gustarían decir? ¿Comentarios? Okay, well, the time is 8:16. And what I will say that part of the reason for creating this space is I just wanted to make sure that people were educated, not only just on what other neighboring towns are doing, but educated on the demographics of our own town. Our residents are educated on the conversation because as part of the Hispanic Outreach Committee, this is something that we are going to push forward. So for us, it's a discussion, but it's also actually something that we're pushing to have happen in our town. Entonces, lo que yo dije es que gracias a todos por participar y hablar sobre esto, que para nosotros como parte del Comité Hispano, no es solo de tener la discusión, pero de activamente pasar esto en nuestro pueblo. Entonces es más que una discusión, es algo que va a pasar, que vamos a luchar para que esto pase en nuestro pueblo. No other comments? No other questions? Okay, so for everyone who was on here and shared, what I will say is that I'm hoping to have this again, and I just appreciate your time, sitting us at the time to listen and to talk about this. So I appreciate you very much. So thank you for being a part of this tonight. Entonces, gracias a todos por participar, por hacer el tiempo para estar en esta llamada, por sus comentarios, y espero tener más conversaciones así. Y gracias. Okay.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Gracias.
Thank you, Monica. Nice seeing all of you.
Nice
Take
to see
care.
all of you.
Nice to see
Good
you as
night,
well.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.